the name implies, these are the class of drug which can neutralize the gastric acid. So far we have seen under first class the drugs that can reduce the gastric acid production. Okay, whereas this is the class which can neutralize the acid which is already secreted in the stomach. So whatever gastric acid is secreted, it will be neutralized by the antacids and raise the pH of the gastric content. Okay. Peptic activity, that is a pepsin, its activity is indirectly reduced. Okay. If the pH rises above 4 because of the acid neutralizing tendency, it will start raising the pH. Okay, so if the pH raises above 4, it will indirectly affect the activity of the pepsin. Okay, because this pepsin, it is secreted as a complex with an inhibitory terminal moiety. So this dissociates only below the pH of 2 to 4. So if the pH raised above this, it will indirectly inhibit the activity of the pepsin also, which is secreted in the stomach. Okay. Now this antacids, they don't actually affect the acid production. Okay, nothing to do with the acid production, just like with the first class. These only will start neutralizing the pH and they will start raising the pH above certain level. So once the pH is raised above 4, the problem with this is that once the alkalinity in your stomach increases, your gastric pH or the pH in your stomach has to be acidic, right? So once it goes above 4, what will happen is there will be a reflex increase in the secretion of the gastrin. Okay, because if your stomach pH goes above the normal, your body will not keep quiet, right? So it will try to bring that acidic pH back. So for that matter, once the pH of your stomach goes above 4, it will start releasing the gastrin. Okay, and gastrin, you are already aware that it is responsible for increase in the acid production. So what will happen is, because of this reflex action, because of the reflex increase in the gastrin, more and more acid will be secreted. Okay, so this is a phenomenon of acid rebound may occur. Okay, and even gastric motility may also be increased, or it may be decreased, or it may be affected. Okay, now coming to the potency of these antacids. So how you will find out the potency of antacid, whether they are showing the action or how much action is being shown by this antacids. Now this potency of antacids, it is measured in terms of acid neutralizing capacity. It is abbreviated as ANC. Now let us see what this ANC is. Before going into the individual drugs, it will be referred under individual drugs. The ANC of this drug is this much, this drug is this much. Okay, so that reflects the potency of your antacid. So higher the value of this ANC, greater is the potency of the drug. Now let us see what exactly this acid neutralizing capacity is and how it is found out. Okay, so this particular ANC, it is the number of milli equivalents of 1 normal HCl that is brought to pH 3.5 in 15 minutes by a unit dose of antacid preparation. So say supposing if you use 1 gram of antacid, right, you react it with 1 normal HCl. Okay, 1 normal HCl, it will have acidic pH, right? So unit dose of antacid preparation, say for example 1 gram of your antacid, it will neutralize certain milli equivalents of your acid, right? So that is found out in terms of number of milli equivalents of this acid which are brought to pH 3.5 in certain period of time. Say for example 15 minutes, or in certain cases it may be considered as 60 minutes also in certain cases. Okay, so more the number of milli equivalents are neutralized, more is the potency of your antacid. Usually 1 gram of antacid is used to find out the ANC. Okay, and this basically depends upon the rate at which it dissolves and reacts with the HCl. So this is very important. Okay, dissolution of your drug and reaction with the HCl is very, very important. So unless and until it will react with your HCl, it will not neutralize it, right? So that's very important. Dissolution and reaction with the HCl is quite important. The rate with which it dissolves and reacts with the HCl, that is quite important. Okay, now also its dissolution should also be fast and its reaction also should be fast. That's because your drug will neutralize the acid which is present in your stomach, right? And any drug or any substance stays in your stomach for round about 30 to 60 minutes, right? Okay, your whatever content present in your stomach, it will start moving further towards your intestine. So there is a very less time allowed for your antacid to act in your stomach. Because of your gastric emptying, your antacids will start moving into your small intestine. So that's a major drawback. So your antacids, when they are taken with meals, they will act for say a little bit longer time. If you take it on the empty stomach, they will be passed on very quickly. If you take it with meals, they may act for a little bit longer time, say for example 2 to 4 hours. That is also very short actually. So within this time they have to neutralize the gastric acid which is present. Okay, so these are the certain drawbacks. Now coming to the actual drugs under this, we have seen that they are divided into two subclasses, that is systemic antacids and the non-systemic antacids. So as the name implies, systemic antacids is the one which will act systemically, and the non-systemic ones are which will act locally. Okay, so under systemic antacids, the first one is sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate, you are already aware of. This is a quite commonly used chemical in the laboratories also. So this is actually an alkali, right? Sodium bicarbonate. So its properties, like it is water soluble. So it's a good water soluble drug. Acts instantaneously because solubility is quite good. It will act very quickly, but the duration of action is quite short. Okay, so this is the drawback. And its neutralizing capacity, if you can see, okay, 1 gram of your sodium bicarbonate, it can neutralize 12 milli equivalents of the HCl. So this talks about the potency. This is the ANC of sodium bicarbonate. So with 1 gram of bicarbonate, sodium bicarbonate, 12 milli equivalents of HCl will be neutralized and the pH may rise above 7. Okay. But there are certain demerits or disadvantages with the use of sodium bicarbonate. The problems, like once it is absorbed systemically, it can induce alkalosis, right? Because it is an alkali. So when it enters into your systemic circulation, it can precipitate alkalosis. Okay. Next problem is carbon dioxide production. Okay, it's a bicarbonate, right? So once it is it will react, it may release the carbon dioxide in the stomach. So a lot of gases will be produced, so it will result in distension of stomach, discomfort will be produced, belching, that is a passage of gases will take place through mouth. Then there is risk of ulcer perforations also. The next disadvantage is acid rebound, this may occur. Okay. Next disadvantage is increase in the sodium load. It is sodium bicarbonate, right? So a lot of sodium will start entering your body, so it may worsen conditions like edema. Sodium meaning it will start retaining the water also in your body, so edema may get worsened. Congestive heart failure, if any patient is suffering from, so in that also it will create a problem because lot of sodium load. Even the hypertension patients also, sodium is not good for their health. So these will create certain problems in certain situations if the patient is suffering from some other complication. Okay. So usually this use of sodium bicarbonate, it is restricted only for the treatment of heartburn, acidity, normal acidity if you can see. So symptomatic relief may be produced, or it may be used for alkalinization of the urine or to treat the acidosis. If the patient is suffering from acidosis, you can administer the alkalis. So usually these drugs are not preferred for the treatment of ulcers. These are used only as a symptomatic treatment for the minor conditions. Next drug is sodium citrate. These also properties are similar. Potency wise, you can see that it can neutralize only 10 milli equivalents of HCl. So it is less potent as compared to sodium bicarbonate. Advantage is that carbon dioxide is not evolved by this particular drug. Then next subclass is non-systemic antacids. So these are actually insoluble and poorly absorbed basic compounds. So they act locally. Okay. So what will happen is, over here in the stomach, they will react, okay, to form the chloride salts. The corresponding chloride salts will be formed, and this chloride salt again, it will react with the intestinal bicarbonate, so that the bicarbonate is not spared for. So it will not be absorbed. It will not be spared for absorption, meaning bicarbonate will not be absorbed. Okay. So because of this acid base disturbances which may take place, so that will not happen with the use of non-systemic antacids. Okay. So coming to the first drug, that is magnesium hydroxide. So this drug has low water solubility. Okay. Its aqueous suspension is known as milk of magnesia. So try to remember these names also. Okay, milk of magnesia, this magnesium hydroxide suspension is known as. Okay, so this particular drug also reacts with HCl and starts neutralizing. If you can see the ANC of this particular drug, it is 1 gram is neutralizing 30 milli equivalents of HCl. So it is quite efficacious antacid, if you can see. And even rebound acidity is also mild and brief, if at all it occurs. Next drug is magnesium trisilicate. This also has low solubility and reactivity, and if you can see, the efficacy is little bit lower. It can neutralize 10 milli equivalents of acid, but in the clinical use, actually only 1 milli equivalent will be neutralized. So its potency is quite low, okay, as compared to other antacids which are used. Okay, and about 5% of the administered magnesium, this is absorbed systemically. Though this is non-systemic antacids, some amount of magnesium may be absorbed into your systemic circulation, and they may produce problems, specifically if renal function is affected. Okay. Now all of these magnesium salts which we have seen so far, all of them have laxative action. Okay, that is, they will increase the GI motility. Okay, so they generate the osmotically active magnesium chloride. So we have seen that they dissociate and react with the chloride, right? Okay, so chloride salts are formed. So magnesium chloride will be formed in the stomach. Okay, so that has a laxative action, that is, it will increase the GI motility. Okay, clinically also they are used as osmotic purgatives, as we will see under this chapter again. And the third type of drug, non-systemic antacid, is aluminum hydroxide gel. Actually this is a bland in taste, weak and slowly reacting antacid. Okay, and on keeping, this will start polymerizing. So that's a major drawback with this drug. So when it is formulated and when it is stored, okay, usually once it is formulated, it will not be consumed, right? So once it is kept for over a period of time, it will start polymerizing slowly to variable extent. Okay, and after polymerization, whatever form it is converted into, it is less reactive. Okay, already aluminum hydroxide gel, it is low reacting antacid. Plus, if you store that preparation, it will start polymerizing, and again it will get converted into certain forms which are still less reactive. So upon keeping or upon storage, the activity or the efficacy of this drug will go on reducing. Okay, so the ANC of this preparation gradually declines upon storage because it polymerizes upon storage. Also it may be variable from different manufacturers. The ANC may not be same for all the preparations from all the manufacturers. So it may vary from 1 to 2.5 milligrams per gram. So 1 gram can neutralize just 1 to 2.5 milligrams of HCl. So its efficacy also is very, very low. Okay, so that's the drawback. One more drawback is that aluminium, it will relax the smooth muscle, so that the gastric emptying is reduced, GI motility is reduced, so constipation may be produced because of this particular drug. So that's a major limitation with the use of aluminum hydroxide. So also aluminum hydroxide, it binds to the phosphate in the intestine. So once it splits, it will react with the phosphate which is present in your intestine and prevent the absorption of the phosphate. So because of this, your body phosphate content will go low. So hypophosphatemia will be precipitated if you use aluminum hydroxide regularly. So regular and prolonged use is discouraged because it will reduce the body phosphate level. So because of this, there are certain consequences which will be produced because of this action. Osteomalacia may be precipitated. Okay. Advantage is that in case of hyperphosphatemia, you can use it therapeutically. Okay. Or if there are phosphate stones which are formed, you can reduce the absorption of the phosphate into the systemic circulation. Okay. Or you can treat this particular condition also, wherein there is increase in the level of the phosphate ions. Okay. So also small amounts of aluminum that is absorbed, okay, it is excreted by the kidney, okay, which is not possible in case of renal failure. Okay. So because of this, aluminum toxicity may be precipitated in those patients whom renal failure has taken place. So conditions like encephalopathy or osteoporosis may be precipitated. Next drug is megalderate. So this is actually a complex. It is a hydrated complex of hydroxymagnesium aluminate that initially reacts very rapidly with the acid. So this complex reacts with the acid which is present in your stomach and will start releasing the aluminum hydroxide. Okay, now this further aluminum hydroxide which is released, this will react a little bit slowly. But if you can say that aluminum hydroxide is being produced freshly into your stomach, right? And with aluminum hydroxide, we have seen that there are so many problems. If you store the preparation, its ANC will go on reducing. So instead it can be formulated in this way, so that aluminum hydroxide is released fresh in your stomach directly. Okay, so this will react with your acid. Okay, so it is more reactive, it is present in the unpolymerized, more reactive form. Okay, because it is freshly prepared directly at the site of action. Okay, so that's the advantage of this particular preparation. Okay, so its ANC also, if you can see, it is quite good. 1 gram can neutralize 28 milli equivalents of HCl. So it is a very good potency. Next drug is calcium carbonate. So this is again a potent and rapidly acting drug, and potency also is quite good. 1 gram can neutralize 20 milli equivalents of HCl. Okay, but the ANC may be variable from different manufacturers. This may be because of the change in the particle size or crystal structure and all that. Okay. So also carbon dioxide release in the stomach, that also takes place at a slower rate, but sometimes distension and discomfort may take place. Again, calcium ions, these are partly absorbed. Calcium carbonate it is. So calcium will be partly absorbed. This is a non-systemic actually, but it may be absorbed into systemic circulation. Okay. So the greatest drawback with this preparation, calcium carbonate as an antacid, is that calcium ions may diffuse into the gastric mucosa and it may increase the acid production. Okay. Directly by acting onto the parietal cells as well as indirectly by releasing the gastric. So acid rebound is quite marked with this particular drug, calcium carbonate. So also calcium carbonate is constipating, that is, it will reduce the GI motility. But in certain individuals, loose motions may also be seen, but is the main action. And calcium, in case of renal insufficiency, it can be quite dangerous. Okay, because accumulation of calcium may take place. Now coming to the next part. So this finishes the individual drugs antacid combination. So usually a combination of 2 or more antacids is quite commonly used. Okay. Now there are certain advantages of combining more than one antacid together. Okay. Now let us see what are the advantages of combination of the antacids. Certain antacids, we have seen that they act faster. Magnesium hydroxide, it acts fast. Aluminum hydroxide, it acts a little bit slowly. Okay, so appropriate action, quick action is also seen and prolonged action is also seen because of this combination. Okay, then next, magnesium salts are laxative, that is they increase the GI motility, diarrhea may be precipitated, whereas aluminum salts, these are constipating, that is they reduce the GI motility. So when you combine magnesium salts with the aluminum salts, obviously they will annul each other's action. So there will be less of action on the GI motility. Next is that gastric emptying, this is least affected, while the aluminum salts, they tend to delay it, and magnesium or calcium salts, they tend to hasten. So if you combine aluminum salts with the magnesium or calcium salts, the gastric emptying will be least affected. Okay. So also if you combine two drugs, obviously the individual drugs dose will be reduced, so systemic toxicity is also minimized. So this is another advantage of the combination. Coming to the drug interactions, obviously because these drugs raise the gastric pH, okay, and by forming certain complexes with certain drugs, so they will start decreasing the absorption of many drugs like tetracycline, iron salts, fluoroquinolones, ketoconazole, H2 blocker, diazepam, phenothiazine, indomethacin, nitrofurantoin. So if at all they have to be combined together, if it is unavoidable, stagger their administration. Keep a gap of at least 2 hours in between administration of these two types of drug. Okay. The next interaction is with the nitrofurantoin, urinary antiseptic. Okay. So the efficacy of this drug is reduced because certain antacids, they alkalinize the urine. Okay. So because of that, efficacy of nitrofurantoin will be reduced. And coming to the uses of antacids, as such they are not used for healing the peptic ulcers, okay, because large doses are required, frequent dosing is required, they are quite inconvenient, patient compliance is not good, acid rebound may occur, bowel upset which may take place. Okay. So because of these several advantages, as such they are not used in healing the peptic ulcers, but the valid uses of antacids is for the relief of the pain and acidity. Okay. Generally these drugs are available as over the counter preparation, so generally people buy it and take it in case of the acidity. Okay. So also they are used for non-ulcer dyspepsia, indigestion, okay, or heartburn, or this may be used in GERD also. Okay. Symptomatic relief may be produced. Okay. And it can be used for acid eructation, that is belching, and heartburn. Okay, so these are the valid uses of antacids. So it is no longer used only for the treatment of ulcer. Okay, so we'll stop here.